When Benjamin Britten was working on his Suffolk-based opera Peter Grimes here in the village of Snape, he wanted to include a traditional English folk song. After weeks and weeks of looking in dusty library collections, he eventually found what he wanted in a Burr Live songbook. But it would have been far easier and quicker if he'd have just opened the window and asked his gardener, because Benjamin Britten's gardener at that point was a man whose whole life had been like a folk song. He was born at Southerton on the Land in 1892. As a teenager, he had ran away to sea, learning to sing whilst hauling the nets on trawlers out of Lowestoft. When he was 18, he got pneumonia, taken to hospital and given the last rites. Remarkably, he recovered just in time for the start of the Great War in 1914. He was at Loo and Ypres before receiving a life-transforming wound at the Battle of the Somme. It took 6 years of groundbreaking surgery to reconstruct his jaw, but during that time he had fallen in love through the window and got married from his hospital bed. Everywhere he went, he picked up songs. But it was only in his later years, after suffering the tragic loss of his wife and 2 sons within the space of 18 months, that he took to singing again in the pubs of this village, like the one over the road there, the Crown and the Golden Key round the corner. Benjamin Britten had no idea that he had such a worthy and faithful exponent of folk songs in his employ. But eventually, in 1973, this man and his songs were recognised, and this record was brought out by Topic in 1973. The man's name was Bob Hart, and he was 81 years old. So Bob first learned to sing at sea, and this is one of the very first songs he picked up.
Come, come, my lads, and listen here, a fisherman's song you soon will hear. What I did and undergo when first I went a cod banging out to me laugh all the day, riddle all day. This is a smacksman's life at sea. How well I remember on the 14th of May, a big bark ship, she came our way. She came our way and did let fly, and the topsail halyards flew sky high to me laugh all the day, riddle all day. This is a smacksman's life at sea. And as we draw near Harwich Pier, the young and the old they soon draw near, to see us get our fish on deck and crack their skulls with a little shout stick, to me laugh all the day, riddle all day. This is a smacksman's life at sea. And now my song is nearly done, I hope I've not offended one. I don't think I've got it complete, 'cause I've only been in the trade about a week, to me laugh all the day, riddle all day. This is a smacksman's life at sea, to me laugh all the day, riddle all day. This is a smacksman's life at sea. I mean, it could have been timed. I mean, literally, if you waited a second longer.
Because of the relationship we have with Folk East Festival here in Suffolk, in 2016 we were asked to work alongside an amazing cohort of extremely talented young musicians, the Aldborough young musicians, whose base is here at Snape Maltings. Now, Snape Maltings is a world-renowned centre of classical music and art. It was founded by Benjamin Britten. But in Bob's day, it was a working maltings. It was the biggest employer in the area by far. Maltings taking grain, turning it into malt to make beer and whiskey. And Bob worked here for 40 years. Now in 2016, our task was to create a performance piece with these young musicians that celebrated something of Suffolk and its heritage and its song. And John Marshall Potter encouraged us to listen to Bob's seminal album. Now I think when young people today listen to the old singers, the source singers, the field recordings, sometimes it feels hard to access to the modern ear. Many of these recordings were collected in pubs when the singers were very elderly and misremembered things and went in and out of tune. But you've got to get beyond that, you've got to get into their world. And once we explained to the young people the story of Bob's amazing life, it just opened up from then on in. And they decided that we should tell Bob's story, taking 5 of his songs, 5 songs from his incredibly long repertoire, his big repertoire, And these 5 songs would cover 5 elements of Bob's life: land, sea, war, love and loss. And the most moving moment for us was when the young people decided to take Bob's version of the famous marching off to war song, The Scarlet and the Blue, and not just to reinterpret it, but to actually use Bob's voice in the recording, and it was really beautiful.
Then you run for the scarlet and the blue, see the helmets glitter in the sun, and the bayonets flash like lightning to the beating of the old militia drum. There's a flag in dear old Ireland, proudly waving in the sky, and the watchword of our soldiers is we'll conquer or we'll die. There's one that I have left behind, and that's my Nelly dear. I know that she'll be proud of me when I am far from here. And when I do return again, I hope you'll all agree. I'll take my Nelly to the church, a sergeant's wife she'll be. Then you run for the scarlet and the blue, see the helmets glitter in the sun, and the bayonets flash like lightning to the beating of the old militia drum.
There's a flag in dear old England, proudly waving in the sky, and the watchword of our soldiers is we'll conquer or we'll.
We're here in the Blacksall Ship. Welcome. This pub is rooted in folk song. Many well-known songs have their roots in this village and in this pub, and indeed many recordings have been made in this pub. We're thinking of songs like The Barley Moor. Here's good luck to the pint pod, here's luck to the barley moor. We're thinking of songs like The Nutting Girl. Well, pull out to the old fellow, work for the dear old day, and what few nuts that poor girl had, he threw them all away. We're thinking of songs like The Larks They Sang Melodious, and the larks they sang melodious, and the larks they sang melodious at the dawning of the day. I'm going to teach those songs to Michael and David shortly.
Oh, I know them.
But songs were very much a part of this village, this community, and there's an incredible film in 1955. The folklorist Peter Kennedy came here, and it's available online. We'll put the link up. And it's an evening of song in this pub in the 50s. Alan Lomax, the great American song collector and folklorist, came here to collect songs. And as you can see on the wall around us, we've got the recordings, we've got pictures of all the old singers, and there's Bob Hart himself down there. There was a wonderful study done of this place by Jeanette Dunn about 40 years ago, and it's called The Fellowship of Song, and it really sort of dissects everything that singing was and everything that singing still is to some people in this part of the world. And it's really interesting thinking about song ownership. She said that for these old guys, having a song was like owning a cow. It was part of them. And if you had a song that was your song, even though you could trace it traditionally back to your father and so on, it belonged to you, and no one else was allowed to sing it until you were dead. And that's part of the reason that in these like recordings that we have from the 50s, 60s and 70s, the sort of younger singers who were coming through weren't really singing those old traditional songs. They were singing big band songs on the radio, they were singing music hall songs, because they were looking for songs and they weren't allowed to sing the old ones because it wasn't the right thing to do when the person who they knew to sing it, the person they associated with it, was still alive. And as you can probably see and gather, it feels like a very sort of male-dominated singing world. I think that's an important thing to say. Blacksoe is one of the locations that we come to every year to do our annual singing weekends in normal circumstances, and we always end both evenings with a sing-song in the ship here. And in 2019 we actually recreated this album, The Larks They Sang Melodious. It was recorded in 1973 and it's a fascinating collection of songs. It was all done in this room, and what's brilliant about it was that it combined all the old guys, many of whom you can see on the wall, who were all like in the 70s and their 80s at that point, with recordings made that night by some of the young folk revivalist singers who just started folk clubs in the area. And the record opens with a rendition of Donkey Riding by a man called Tony Hall. And when we recreated the album 46 years after it was released, we found Tony Hall and we persuaded him to come along, and he recreated his part, and it was this magical moment. The album really captures the atmosphere of that night in 1973, and it's wild, it's raucous, it's full of life and energy and drink. But when Bob Hart is called on to sing, the pub falls silent, and he sings a song called White Wings. It's like an old Christian sort of anthem, really, but it's beautiful. And we always think of the story of when Bob first met his wife, which he told so beautifully. And the story was that Bob was convalescing after his serious war wound at the Somme, and he says, "I was home on leave from the hospital when I saw a girl looking out of the window, and I looked up at her. That was right opposite the pub over the road. I put my hand up and she laughed, or smiled rather. Wonder who she is. And before I went back from leave, I knew who she was. I found out. I never said nothing to her, but I saw her mother. I wrote to her mother and asked her if she'd mind me writing to her daughter. And she said she didn't see why not. And that's how I started with my wife. I was married December 1917 to that girl I saw looking out of the window. I got married from hospital."
Sail home as straight as an arrow, me yacht shoots along on the crest of the sea. Sail home to sweet Maggie Darrow, in a dear little home she is waiting for me. High up where the cliffs they are craggy, that's where the girl of my heart waits for me. Yo, I long for you, Maggie. I'll spread out me white wings and sail home to thee. Yah-ho, yah-hey, how we go, how the winds do blow. White wings, they never grow weary, they carry me cheerily over the sea. Night comes, I long for you, dearie. I'll spread out me white wings and sail home to thee. Sail home to love and caresses, where Maggie, my darling, is there by my side. Sail home, blue eyes and gold tresses. The fairest of all is my own little bride. Sail home to part from me never. Always together life's voyage will be. Sail home to love thee forever. I'll spread out me white wings and sail home to thee. Yah-ho, yah-hey, how we go, how the winds do blow. White wings, they never grow weary, they carry me cheerily over the sea. Night comes, I long for you dearly. I'll spread